is this a general outlier versus what we've seen in the past, where a lot of these sort of Asian IPs do find an audience in the West? Also, I don't really want to watch this video, so I'd rather not.
No, dude, this is player empathy. Do not avert your eyes.
You're making Adam uncomfortable. You know, his Canadian sensibilities.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Games 358. I'm Jen Donahoe. I fill the marketing and publishing role on today's podcast. Today, we have special flying in from Canada for Shooter Talk is...
Adam. Yeah, Adam Telfer. Good to be here. Just product. There you go.
Eric, strategy investing.
Phil, fourth chair. Fuck that. Monetizations are.
I love it. I love bumping you to the end. All right, here's what we have going on the episode today. It's the shit on Call of Duty 7 session. Just a stunning ass kicking that's going on. We're going to go over a bunch of the numbers that we have available to us today on Wednesday, November 19th. Let's see. Oh, Valve and Steam's GameCube is coming. It's called the Steam Machine. That's the real name. GDC released a US salary report and all of Europe gets pissed. Ubisoft speculation. Is someone buying them? I think, Adam, you threw this in here. Miyamoto releases pictures from the live action Zelda movie to a positive buzz. The guy looks like Link. I was like super impressed with that. Phil hits two ends of the spectrum. Phil, this was really kind of funny. You've got the cozy games and then sexy cozy games. Like, I was a little bit weirded out, but you're going to hit all of that for us later. Sadly, we don't have time to talk about this subject that just dropped this morning, which is Unity and Epic have just announced that games made with Unity are coming to Fortnite. This includes Unity's new commerce engine. It just got announced. We have a ton of questions, so we decided we're just going to bump that to next week until we can figure out what's going on, but that could be kind of interesting news. All right, let me just do a few quick shills. AppsFlyer dropped news of their big fall release, so if you're in UA or growth, go check that out. On Tuesday last night, I had another Yoda session at UCLA, so thanks to Nick for having me come and talk to, 20, 30 MBA students. And then I wanted to do a little bit of a sad note. Trailblazer Interplay co-founder Rebecca Heinemann has died of cancer at the age of 62. Heinemann taught herself to code by reverse engineering code, won a National Space Invaders contest when she was just 14. Although she has a startling array of game credits to her name from the time at Interplay and beyond, Heinemann said Bard's Tale 3 was what started her on her path to being a studio head. She was also a gaming icon recipient in 2025. She's part of the LGBTQ community. So sad news of her passing. A lot of people remembering her. It's just great. Again, women in games who have been making games for 30 years was pretty big.
Game devs. Here at Heroic Labs, we know that great gameplay is what players love, but integrating metagame features like challenges, progression, and rewards is crucial for retention and monetization. But coding them is a tedious and time-consuming process. That's why top studios have turned to Hero from Heroic Labs. Hero provides a complete suite of battle-tested metagame features that are quick to implement, letting you spend more time on the core gameplay experience. Ready to ship fully featured, engaging games? Check out Hero today at heroiclabs.com.
Web stores. You've seen what good looks like, but have you experienced great? AppCharge is the direct-to-consumer platform that powers over $500 million in transactions each year for top studios. They're not just another vendor. They're backed by Supercell and built by monetization veterans from Moonactive, Playtika, and other industry giants who understand the difference between merely functional and the truly exceptional. What sets them apart? Deeply personalized web stores with custom-designed offers, industry-leading monetization features, seamless in-game payment integration, and a robust SDK. While 70% of top-grossing games already have web stores, the ones scaling the fastest are doing it with AppCharge. Ready to transform good into great? Learn more at appcharge.com. All right, so corrections. Phil, what did we get wrong?
Well, kind of more of an update here. I mean, Eric and I were talking about Amazon Game Studios, their huge layoffs. Was this the end of Amazon Game Studios? But we talked about Montreal, which is their studio where they hired a lot of the ex-Rainbow Six Siege team, and that they were working on a MOBA. And that was the question mark about whether or not AGS was dead. I got a lot of text messages from former AGS friends. Yeah, they're toast. The Montreal studio is being shopped. It's trying to be sold. And after Tomb Raider, just as you said, Eric, they are dunzos. So we can add that to the graveyard of failed tech companies that have tried to do gaming. And you can already feel the Grim Reaper coming from Microsoft.
Yeah, I think Twitch got a lot of unknown hits as well. I think a lot of different arms, although there's still a lot of Amazon people around, which is interesting. It's like which sections got toasted, which sections didn't. It's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is there.
I think the point I think Philip's making is that basically Amazon is done. Like once they get Tomb Raider out, they are no longer going to be making games.
Prime will stick around.
Twitch casual games
Twitch will
and
stick around.
Yeah, but that's what I said. I think that's what I said originally, which was what I was hearing from folks. So
you're right.
Not good.
And that closes the book on Montreal.
And MOBAs. I hope.
It's an RTS MOBA, Eric.
Oh, okay.
Oh, even better.
In that case, oh yeah, green lights all the way.
Two of Cress's favorite genres put together. All right, let's get to Call of Duty Black Ops 7 launch. So let me just give you a little bit of a rundown on some of the numbers. So the fall showdown has begun. Call of Duty versus Battlefield 6 versus Arc Raiders. That's the one we didn't know was going to be in the mix, is now in the mix. Later on, maybe Tarkov, but probably not going to be in there. So I have to admit to being really stunned at just how bad this is for Call of Duty. I know we predicted it. I know we were saying it was going to be bad, but this is actually stunning how bad this is. Black Ops 7 launched on Friday, November 14th. So we're less than a week into the launch. So I'm going to cover a few ratings and more marketing things, and Adam and Phil will come in with some actual CCU, DAU numbers. So on the rating side, historic low user scores. Black Ops 7 sits at a 1.7 out of 10 user score on Metacritic, making it the lowest rated Call of Duty installment in franchise history. Even worse than Modern Warfare 3's 2.3 out of 10. 22 critics have it at an 82%. OpenCritic has it at 75% for the critics. So there's definitely a difference between critical response and user response. On Steam, the game has a 44% approval rating. Twitch is down 60% versus Black Ops 6. Twitch viewership also fell, with Black Ops 7 peaking at like 160,000 concurrent viewers versus Black Ops 6's about 400,000. Google Trends. This was kind of interesting. I pulled up a bunch of stuff, but the gist is that Black Ops 7 had about a 65% drop off from Black Ops 6. Black Ops 7 actually dropped 40% from what Battlefield 6 did in Google search interest. Battlefield 6 outperformed it in search interest with two peaks at 44%. So what I loved about what Battlefield 6 did was that they had two big kind of search interests, one for the beta that they had, and then also one at launch. So something that we haven't seen historically when you look at trends for these games. So Adam, take us through a little bit of what you saw for Steam.
This tells the pretty grim story here. You look at the 6 on this graph, which is Black Ops 6, roughly a 70% drop in CCU versus Black Ops 6's opening weekend. So that's 100K this year versus about 315 on 6. The real challenge here is that it's basically a blip on the CCU chart compared to Black Ops 6. The real pithy part of this is that there's been free weekends previously that have driven larger spikes in CCU than Black Ops 7. So this is pretty grim. We are waiting on sales data still. So far it looks very soft on digital year over year, but I would still wait until there's sort of better data across platforms, including console, before reporting real numbers. Like here, we're looking at Steam. This is only one section of the market. But if these numbers are to be believed, right, like 70% drop in CCU, significant drop in their go-to-market KPIs, then my assumption of just how strong the floor was on sort of COD sales is likely challenged. This is going to be a pretty poor year for COD, and I believe it's actually their own doing. I think for context here, the most important part is that COD is on this cycling studio model, and we all knew this would be another off year, right? We all knew this was going to be a weak year. They went from a 3-year cycle and up to 2019, which I think continually delivered great games, to now sort of a 16, 18-month cycle with sort of skeleton crews in early dev, and then these like massive resource spikes of piling on their resources for that final push up to launch. And that's where we started to see this sort of like Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops 7 types of performances. This just requires teams to really lock in, I think, like big innovation bets really early in development. And those resource spikes basically force a very consistent vision and really difficult studio cohesion and iteration capability. So the key issues with Black Ops 7, in my perspective, are sort of four key things. One is campaign. It's worse than Modern Warfare 3. This is likely why there's a big knee-jerk sort of hater reaction to this. So I would expect that like as people get exposed more to Call of Duty, these things will settle into a better spot, but knee-jerks are going to happen. The innovations that they made, that they locked in early, just aren't resonating with players. I'll say like they added a PvE extraction mode. There's this cursed zombie mode. It seems like those are getting more positive vibes, but their movement changes actually made things feel worse. And a lot of the features and innovations don't really hit the main audience of COD. On top of this, the theme has shifted from sort of modern military to this like hallucinations focused theme, and like, let's call it like zombies, hallucinations, and fantasy focus. Like Black Ops was always the number 2 brand for COD, but it always leaned into sort of modern military espionage. I think in this one, they just went off the rails. They went too extreme in this one.
I remember seeing that in the trailer. Like we were like, wait, what game is this?
It looked like a sci-fi game. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
It looked very sci-fi. Yeah, so I hear you on that a lot. I thought you were talking about the AI hallucinations, which is there was a lot of shit being given for AI usage in the game as well, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah,
but anyways.
I'm not sure if that actually had a ton of impact on sales, but like I think pretty strongly that their shift away from grounded modern military hurt them, especially in comparison to Battlefield 6.
Yeah.
And then lastly, major performance issues at launch. The thing I'll call out here is actually controller players. A lot of issues around auto aim and how controller players felt, especially with movement, being behind sort of keyboard mouse. There's actually like, there was an opportunity here. There was an open lane with Battlefield 6 because Battlefield 6 was so PC centric that if they executed well for like console players in PS5, there actually would be some differentiation. But in this case, unfortunately, the controller seemed like it took a step back. So again, I think this is the year that they take it on the nose as COD, and they expected that. It's just their intended off here. But I think this performance is going to start to signal this is going to suck even more for Microsoft and for Activision, likely leading to further layoffs, unfortunately. Next year is Infinity Ward. It's been 4 years, likely back to modern military. Supposedly, Infinity Ward is focused on an overall like engine overall. So that should be good, but the pressure will be on them to deliver. Moving forward, I think Microsoft and Activision need to figure out their studio cycling model, because I think that's the crux of this. It's like them just mounting on tech debt, building on this engine, and as well, like how fast these cycles need to operate and how quickly those resources spike. But as EA, there's opportunity. You've got an open lane this whole year to really deliver on Battlefield 6's live, and I think set up a pretty major step change.
Yeah, I mean, you do say it's like off cycle, off year for them, generally speaking. Okay. But they did do another Black Ops game, but they did Future, which makes no sense, right? To do, just generally speaking. You know, my objection to this Activision deal from the get-go was this is what the likely result would be, right? They have lost the rudder of the ship, right? Because there's no one really managing this and pushing the shit forward anymore. And being in an environment where everything seems to be falling apart at the seams is just a really, really tough place to be building, you know, innovative and new shit, right? And so next year is the proof, like whether they can actually pull something out. And I hope they are doing everything in their power, moving heaven and earth to spend as much money and build as much teams in order to build the right game for next year. I have my doubts, right? I just don't think they have the resources anymore to do what they need to do in order to get this thing back on track. But that'll be my prediction for next year. I don't think the game is nearly as bad as people are suggesting. Like, I mean, the single player is fucking terrible. Absolutely terrible. Like, there's no doubt, like, the single player was basically phoned in. Co-op gameplay is really tough. Like, open world co-op gameplay is very tough. The zombie mode is phoned in, although it has some highlights. But The multiplayer is still solid, right? Which is what people play Call of Duty for. So I think that will find its audience again to some degree, the hardcore Call of Duty fans. But I just don't think it competes with the Battlefield, engine, the destructible environments, the newness of the franchise. And then Arc Raiders is obviously super, relatively innovative in that space too. So anyway, I hope they pull it out for next year. I just really have my doubts that Microsoft is in a position to make the investments required to make that happen. And this is part of the problem with this whole acquisition to begin with, and their failed subscription strategy.
Do you think Kotick knew there was these cracks in the cycling studio model? And do you think they might need to take a break, say after Infinity Ward, to get this back on track?
Okay, first of all, no. Dude, they were able to be the top selling game for the last fucking 20 years, in all of gaming. Consistently, right? I think 1 year, they lost it to Warner, right? I don't think the leadership knows how to manage studios, right? I don't think they know how to manage the SKU plan. I don't think they know how to get things out on time. It's the same idea as taking guys out of Riot and putting them in a new game studio. It's like, these guys know how to do one thing within the game development. They don't know how to allocate resources and allocate budgets and build P&Ls and shit like that. Like, they know how to make games, right? And so these people with these particular skill sets, they don't know how to allocate the resources properly to execute against the market, right? The fact that these guys are almost like 3 weeks late, to the game when they knew Battlefield was coming was a huge mistake on their part, right? Like, they don't have the right people in place, not to mention Microsoft is not supporting them the way they need to be supported. They need to be spun out, period, end of sentence. Like, it's over. Right, it's fucking over for Xbox.
Look, I would say history may not repeat, but it rhymes. And it's amazing to me that this is the exact Battlefield 1 Advanced Warfare story all over again. Advanced Warfare was one of the weakest entries in the series, critically, from a player-based perspective. It pushed the series way too sci-fi. Remember, that's when you had the exoskeletons, you're shooting each other.
Sorry, take a Call of Duty Advanced Warfare you're talking about.
Correct. Oh, so apologies. And Battlefield 1 was at its strongest. And so this is the same story all over again. And I don't think that, Adam, we've underscored how awful these numbers are. We're looking at the PSU actuals from Steam right now. And this, again, remember, it's one SKU on Steam. They don't separate out the different game versions. And so this also includes free-to-play Warzone. But the Black Ops 7 release it looks like a content update. And not even that, it doesn't even reach the content updates that we saw earlier in the year. And when you look at Video Game Insights, who pulls in PlayStation and Xbox numbers, comparing Call of Duty's DAU to Arc Raiders looks like it's besting it or at least matching it, this IP out of nowhere. And when you look at this drop in merged DAU for Call of Duty around October 11th, that's when Battlefield launched. Like, there's a direct line from Battlefield launching to Call of Duty having the air sucked out of the room. And I think that we've talked a lot about the Call of Duty having a miss here, but I think this is really the ascent of Battlefield and Arc Raiders. I think that really delivered the final blow to them. And I don't think we can underscore enough what an incredible story this is, because this is Vince's game. Remember, Vince was at Infinity Ward. He's the one who built Call of Duty at a franchise. Remember, he had the lawsuit with Bobby over studio bonuses where he left to go start Respawn, and that's where Titanfall comes from. And now he gets the Battlefield franchise back, and he delivers a final blow to, or I wouldn't say a final blow, but at least a pretty critical blow to Call of Duty, his former franchise, with his new franchise Battlefield. I think that is an unbelievable story. And I think this is going to continue. I think Call of Duty has real competition now. I think they're going to be bringing the heat every single year. DMZ looks like it's not doing anything, their extraction mode. It looks like Arc has totally taken the wind out of that. RedSec may not be succeeding, but I think it may be eating into Warzone to some degree. This is bad news bears. This is bad news bears for Call of Duty. I think you're shitting the bed if you're Microsoft right now.
Listen, I agree with all of you guys. And, I do think there's so many different things at play. One of the things I wanted to bring in from a marketing perspective is, I hate to do this, but I need to comment on the marketing that I'm not sure was very good. No, first of all, I didn't see it anywhere. And I get that I'm not necessarily in the video game audience, but I click on so much stuff I should be. So I didn't see anything. And what I did see was something called the Replacer. And so I guess the idea is that there's this guy or this girl, and you call them in when you're playing Call of Duty. And so there are all of these clips. They're on YouTube. I think it was their TV campaign. And when you look at YouTube on the views for some of these, okay, I'll grant one of them got like a little over 1 million views, but the rest of them are at, I don't know, like 23 to 50K views for this. It doesn't do anything with the game. It was, I guess, designed to be funny. I just think what really contrasts me in the marketing of Black Ops 7 versus the marketing of Battlefield 6, it is just truly night and day. And sorry, marketing team for Black Ops 7, I'm not sure that it hit the mark, especially when you compare it to Battlefield.
I think the Replacer's actually been like a reoccurring character for most of their pre-launch campaigns since like Black Ops 2, maybe 3. It's a gimmick character that they've been doing. So I think it speaks more towards the go-to-market being relatively phoned in.
Yeah.
But I think more to your metrics on like YouTube and engagement, like there just was none. Like people were not resonating with their USPs, with their innovation areas. You could see it in the beta metrics. You could see it in the YouTube. So like even when they brought up a gimmick like this, it wasn't nostalgic anymore. It was more like an eye roll, like just another COD campaign.
Yeah, and that's actually what Battlefield 6 did, was like make fun of all of the COD campaigns by having the celebrities come in. And I thought that was really fresh and new, where these guys are, like you're saying, going back to what they've already done. It's just, you got to go something different. Folks. Okay. Sorry, Chris.
Morale is at an all-time low. Management is not helping figure this out. Sarah Bond and the rest of them are not doing what they need to do in order to get people back. They're reducing spend, they're reducing headcount. Like, they're just not prioritizing Xbox. So this is what happens. When it's not a strategic asset, they're just not making the investments. And so morale is bad. And so they're just phoning all this shit in, including the marketing guys. They have big budgets. So it's like, they're just not as motivated as they used to be. You say some bad things about Bobby Kotick, dude, the guy is fucking motivating,
Yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't say anything. I didn't say that. I just asked if, did he know that the issues were going to creep up like this?
He was worried about a lot of things, including China. This has nothing to do with China, right? It's absolutely nothing to do with China. This is just a miscase.
I also had heard that, once the Microsoft deal went through, there were 30% budget cuts across, everyone. And that's a really difficult thing to do when you're a plugged in machine that you're doing this year in, year out. For someone to come in and say, hey, 30% budget cut, like that's decimating to teams, to budgets. And so maybe that played a role in this as well. All right. So let's keep going. And we are going to go to the next story, which is the hardware nobody asked for that might change everything. Just disruption. I'm just kidding. I actually don't think that's exactly the case. But Valve's newly announced Steam Machine, and no, this is not a retread on their failed 2015 experiment. This time, it's different. The Steam Machine is a console-sized PC running SteamOS, and it's coming out in early 26. It's alongside a new Steam controller, which reviewers seem to say is pretty cool. And I can't wait for Chris. And the Steam Frame VR headset. Watch out, MetaQuest 3. So on paper, it sounds like they're going to go head-to-head with Microsoft and Sony. It's about $550 for base unit that performs kind of like a PS5. It runs 4K at 60 frames per second and looks like a mini Xbox. Looks like actually like a black GameCube. So Adam, tell me a little bit more about what you see with this thing.
There's speculation that it's like 700 plus.
The article I read had like two sizes. One was like a 512 gig box for that lower price point, and then like a 1 gig box for a higher price point.
Just people fishing. I don't think it has not been announced yet, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, I guess my quick take here is that like I like this play by Valve, but like anything, like I look at LinkedIn and the opinion pylon is already in like extrapolation to the moon mode, which I don't really want to jump into. Let's compare this to 2015, right? Those machines failed for some pretty critical reasons. Number one was that they were built by third parties, which led to a bunch of confusing options, price point pressure, and really led to a really tough comp to just buying a regular PC. Now in 2026, Valve is building it like they did with the Steam Deck. Now also SteamOS. Before, it was Linux. Nothing ran on Linux in 2015. In 2026, because of Proton, that's been fixed. on most things run on Steam Deck absolutely well, obviously based on the specs. 2015 was also early in sort of that PS4 generation. 2026 is late in Gen 9. I think that's actually pretty good timing. So PS5 and Xbox gamers have some money to spend now, late in cycle. And I think this should comp well to PS5 Pro.
But to be clear, it's still running Linux.
It is, yeah. But the Proton system has fixed the Linux issue.
Okay.
Now things run on it. Before, very few games actually ran on Linux. Now most games do. So my hope as well is that maybe for the Steam machine, they actually bring out some content exclusives. If they do Half-Life 3,
Why would
that would be some damn good timing.
Right.
But those are just rumors. The challenges, I'll call it two. One is the specs and their actual shelf life. Buying sort of like a PS5 Pro-esque spec thing right now, how long will that last? Like a 2026 machine, next gen is coming in 2027, 2028. So for me, like the deck when it launched barely ran Elden Ring and Cyberpunk. And now my deck is actually bricked. The only way I could only play indie games. So I think they're going to need to figure out some better lifecycle management to make sure titles actually run well on the hardware for the foreseeable future. Otherwise, it ends up just turning into the Steam Link. The main spec to watch there is 8 gigabytes of VRAM. This is the critical spec to watch since it'll actually bring down 4K and sort of high refresh rates that I think players have been pretty focused on, sort of PS5 Pro and above. Also anti-cheat and sort of anti-Steam. So SteamOS can't run titles that have kernel level anti-cheat. So those are titles like Valorant, Battlefield 6, GTA Online, just the online component, Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, PUBG, Call of Duty.
what the fuck is left?
Yeah,
That's
like,
right? So
wait,
like
what?
Whoa.
Major,
All right, calm
major,
down.
major PvP titles right now can't run on SteamOS. So they have to aggressively go after the relationships with these studios to figure out how to make sure that those things can run on this hardware. Also, things that are just off Steam can't run. So League of Legends, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox are definitely the notable ones.
90% of the revenue driven by gaming is not allowed to play on the Steam Deck. It's like,
Well, it's the same thing as like most of those titles. Like, okay, so League of Legends, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox are not on Steam. So you have that on PC. So for those reasons, the Steam machine will not outsell the PS6. So LinkedIn, please get off that. That's so fucked. That's not the goal. It'll sell single-digit millions in sort of year one. And that's mainly going to be on price point and availability. It might take some share from Xbox, given that it can play a substantial number of titles and also get access to your existing Steam library. And I think it'll just do what Valve wants, which is to continue to expand its ecosystem. That's why I think it's a smart move and why Valve continues to be a pretty durable company. I don't think it needs to be a console killer to win here. It can sell single-digit millions and make its margin off of those. It just needs to execute against increasing engagement and expanding the ecosystem.
you know, I have to admit, Adam, sometimes I love you on the podcast and sometimes I just generally don't like you on the podcast because you make too much.
Welcome back,
You
Adam.
make too much sense. You know, it's like it's just like it's hard to get like over the top when you're just making total sense. Like what you say is what I should say, but what I'm going to say next is what I want to say. Okay, because I don't disagree with anything.
There's a
that you
reason.
just said. Like,
Sorry, I'm not a very dramatic person.
yeah,
Right?
no, clearly not. Clearly not.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just say one thing. What the fuck are they doing making a VR headset at this day and age? What the fuck is that about? Like, why would you waste any money on R&D building that shit? They must be seeing something I am not in terms of usage on their platform or something. I don't know. But that seems like a really expensive thing. I think VR is kind of DED dead. All right. So let me start there. I do want to say I applaud them coming out with the console. I kind of wish they did this decades ago, building their own thing, like reinforcing the PC architecture and the PC platform as a whole. I mean, I think they kept it open for a long time. But I think what you're saying about the specs are actually the right approach to thinking about it. From my perspective, I think the specs are actually really bad. Like, it's not good, right? Like, the CPU is actually quite good, but the GPU is fucking terrible. It's not future-proof at all. Like, the 8 gigabytes of RAM is a problem.
They're going to have to rely heavily on, what is it, like frame generation and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's like indie games at best, like things like, you know, CD Projekt's games and stuff like that's going to be really hard to run on this device, you know, which it's okay in a small device like the Steam handheld, but when you're talking about a fucking 65-inch, like, 4K television, it's going to be fucking horrific, So there's some issues there that I don't know if they're going to be able to optimize and fix. And then again, back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, with this anti-cheat thing and stuff that's not running on it, right, natively, it's like, dude, like 90% of the market is kind of eliminated by, or at least 90% of the revenue, and maybe 10% of the hype, it's like what all that matters. But the big thing here is the price point. So the bill of materials kind of suggests a $700 price point. And I really have a hard time believing that Steam or Valve is going to subsidize this in any meaningful way. I mean, it's possible. But if a $700 price point is just a non-starter, I mean, that is a niche device at best, right? And frankly, the PS5 is just a better overall device and overall ecosystem,
Chris, is it a niche device for a niche market? Like, that's what I don't understand. It's like, if the idea is that the play pattern is, hey, it's going to be more indie games, we get that you're going to play your big games on your PC that you probably have. Why would you want to spend that much money for that small amount of content? That's what I don't get from like a market fit perspective.
Sometimes I think people assume that people are either PC gamers or console gamers.
Yeah.
But there's enough market data there to suggest that there's a lot of people that have like a good high-end PC and then have that secondary console device and like have a TV and want to play some of those games on PC. So like right now, if I'm an Xbox player, I don't own that many games because I have Game Pass for a long ass time, right? I want to have access to my Steam library on my TV, right? Like there's a pretty compelling part of that. The problem is for PS6 and like PS5 players right now, right? Like there's a ton of content that I want day one already on console. And then when PS6 come out, it's going to come out with a significantly better spec and be more future facing. So I think for PS5 players, it's a significantly weaker argument. But like I'm saying this as somebody who currently has a PC connected to my TV because I want to be able to play higher spec games and be closer to the Steam ecosystem on my TV.
When GTA 6 comes out, it's only on console. Like, I mean, you can't even buy it on this machine, right? This machine's not contemporary in that way. It's
I didn't have GTA 6 on my list, but that's a really good call.
What really bothers me about this is not necessarily what it is, because I do support it. I think it's a great idea. I think they're basically going to eat some of the Xbox's share, but I'm spending way too much time at the actual coverage of the story as opposed to covering the story myself. I want to be crystal clear on this point because Yoast was driving me insane with this bullshit. This is not innovation on distribution. This is a fucking console, okay? Like, we've been doing console for like 30 fucking years, right? This is not innovation at all, right? They should have done this ages ago, right? Like, it doesn't even make any sense, But the reason they don't do it is because the hardware business sucks. It's a low margin business that you have to subsidize to make it work, right? And that's why Xbox is losing right now. So it's like, people think like this is the second coming, dude. The Steam handheld has sold 6 million in 3 years. That's fucking nothing. That is nothing. That is not even an install base that you can sell into. That is a secondary device for the super hardcore, right? So stop listening to Kotaku. Stop listening to IGN. Like those guys, like this shit is small. Like all the market's on the PS5. It's
but
like
the real takeaway is just spend less time on LinkedIn.
I think I got to shut it down. It's too much.
But Kress, the Xbox ROG Ally is exceeding its expectation sales for the high-end unit of 20. Well, I mean, they don't
because they sold in like 500,000 units.
Exactly, right? I mean, we should just get like a betting pool on how many units they're going to announce, and it's going to be under 1 million, I would have to imagine.
Press, Xbox is maybe going to do 4.5 million hardware units this year. Steam Deck is doing 2 million. When I start to look at these numbers, first of all, I think it tells you more about Xbox than it does about, where Steam Deck
that's
is.
also like tail end generation sales versus when we're talking about the first spike of sales for Steam Deck's first spike of sales for this machine. Unfortunately, it does not mean like it's going to, flatline at 4.5 or 5 million a year.
I think that's all fair. And to your point, PS5 is doing 18.5 million units in FY24, so we're not going to get close to that. But still, Steam Deck plus this box, you're starting to add what? If you add another 3, maybe 5 million units on top of that, it's looking really competitive to Xbox, just in terms of getting an install base out there. I would say that the mystery to me is where's China? I mean, that's been a huge part of the growth of the Steam platform, as we've talked about quite a bit. And Eric, you like to tell us that it's been responsible for basically all of the growth. So where is the Chinese distribution plan? Because if you remember, like consoles were banned in China, which is why they relied so heavily on PC. So I'd love to see if Valve has a strategy to put this in the hands of Chinese gamers. And then I think to everyone's point, like, who is this for? Like, who is this for? And just like the Nintendo Switch, the problem is that Switch goes out and sells a shit ton of units. And then what it does is it collects dust on everyone's TV console, which is the same thing that's happened to my Steam Deck and also to my Switch. And so even if you're selling hardware units, the question I have is, are these going to translate to new monthly active users? Is this going to translate to marginal incremental playtime and increased sales for all the games we're talking about? And that's to me where this falls apart, even if they're able to sell units, is that doesn't help the ecosystem or the platform. It just helps Valve get some extra dollars and cents for the hardware enthusiasts.
To your point, the one thing I was thinking of is, could the Steam Machine be the gateway drug for younger console kids to bridge to PC?
$800 at $700?
Well, it's cheaper than a gaming PC. You know, gaming
we don't know
PCs
the price
are...
point yet. We don't know the price point
Okay,
yet.
we don't know the price point. But a gaming PC, a really solid one, is what, $2,000, $3,000? I mean, Phil, you were talking about your motherboard or something cracking.
I'm a little bit different. It's a
There's different price points for gaming rigs. You can still get one for $1,000. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure. But so this is less than that. And so maybe this is like a great gateway drug for younger kids, or it's a gateway drug for older Gen X players. Like, you know, Adam, you were saying, hey, I just want a low friction way to game on my big computer in the TV room. I want to utilize my 2,000 games in my Steam library. I just want to sit on my couch. It's ease of use. I don't have to sit at my desk. So maybe there's like a play pattern or a use case that we're not thinking of where this could be kind of interesting. I also think it fills the gap of the Xbox identity crisis that Xbox is going through right now. I think this is going to be an Xbox, right? Like they have that campaign, this is an Xbox. You know, with sales declining and people not really knowing what it is, Steam is becoming the third console. Just that idea of taking your library to your couch with this device could be interesting. That being said, it's priced the same as those other consoles. So I'm not quite sure, but I also applaud the effort and let's see if we can get in there.
I'm 100% supportive of this. I think it's a great idea. I think they should iterate on this and put together a hardware strategy, use all their gajillions and invest in the hardware stuff. We need someone to replace Xbox as the second console as they, continue to fail. So more power to them. I hope they're successful. Moving on to Ubisoft speculation. So they basically halted trading on the stock and postponed earnings indefinitely, which really does not happen often. Just to be clear.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's not good. Right. So generally, when you postpone earnings, it's either one, there's a sale of the company brewing, two, there's a major restructuring, or three, they're missing numbers dramatically. And given how fucked up this family is, it could be all three for all I know. Right. Who knows. Right. But I'm thinking that probably Tencent is going to put them out of their misery and acquire them. I don't see anyone else coming to the table because of the ownership stake that Tencent has. It is possible the Saudis, but I think they got their hands full at this plate. Now, this is all speculation, by the way. I have no idea. But the real issue here is the same thing. It's like Vantage Studio is all the value of the company. So with Assassin's, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. So it's likely this division will get sold. The rest of it will likely get shut down. So as I said a few weeks ago, Paris is going to burn, Viva la Canada.
Oh, God.
And do you think the performance issues, even Vantage Studios, Siege just had their X update, the free-to-play update. It has not been going very well. Shadows sales looks like they're flat as a pancake, right? Yeah. They're definitely not hitting targets. So even the section they carved out to be the prize jewel doesn't seem that strong right now.
They don't have any releases this year at all. Sorry, next year. In 2026, there's nothing coming out. Yeah, it's scary. But yeah, I have to imagine Tencent's going to put them out of their misery, or let's hope. But we'll see. The next thing, quick one on EA. So the S4 came out and it kind of more or less confirms everything I was saying, and that, all these other pundits out there were completely wrong about in terms of the expectation of 30% reduction in headcount and not enough cash flow to cover the debt, all that bullshit that was complete false narratives of people that don't understand what they're talking about, including Jason Schreier, Yoast, and Reese Elliott, and a bunch of others. The only thing that came up that was a little bit more controversial was that the board of directors decided not to go after other potential counterparties to take the deal from the Saudis without shopping it around to other acquirers. And this was directly in the S4 itself. So for two reasons. One is no one else is likely to have the strategic interest or financial capability to beat the offer. And the outreach could disrupt the business, risk leaks, or lose the investor's interest. So in my brief experience with M&A, I totally think that this is actually a valid concern. You start doing a bidding war and then they walk. And then the people that are coming into the bids are not really that serious and they could cause serious problems. And I think the Saudis would find that very insulting as well, that if they were to do that. So I personally think this makes sense. Some people on the message boards and Slacks were basically thinking that this is a really good deal for the shareholders. But I think this actually makes sense.
They released some of the numbers of how much the leadership team is going to be making from the deal, and it's pretty stunning.
Oh, you mean like retention bonuses going forward, or cash payouts?
Cash payout, I think. Yeah, it was I think Andrew Wilson's getting over $100 million or something. As
money, dude.
Yeah.
It still doesn't make him CEO of Disney. Try again, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, or CEO of Intel. Sorry. He's not going to be a media mogul yet, right? So actually, that is actually a really interesting question now, right? Does he become a media mogul with this new EA Saudi-backed company? Or does he quit in 3 years and do PE, right? That's people keep asking me this question, right? This is his way of building out an empire. They start buying fucking teams and leagues, and they buy the Bundesliga. I don't know what the fuck they would do, right? It's buy FIFA, right? And then create this conglomerate. Maybe he's building his legacy as we speak. No,
it is an interesting idea, especially for EA Sports. Their vision is always to be the premier sports entertainment brand, not necessarily just video games. And the Saudis own a number of the English Premier League teams. Do they buy a league? Does it become even more vertically integrated as a sports entertainment brand? That would be pretty interesting.
If I may be so bold as to say, he's not the right guy to do that. Let me just throw it out there. Andrew Wilson is handsome. He's got the BMI, but he is not the right guy to build a media empire. Just to be clear, this is my conclusion after watching him work for the last 20 years. So that is my humble opinion.
Well, I actually think media is the wrong word, because media is for dinosaurs. I think this integrated, gaming plus sports, entertainment plus live is really the future of what's working. There's the other fight that's the Paramount, Warner Brothers. Who's going to buy Warner Brothers? Is it Comcast? Is it Netflix? That's the other scenario to what you were just saying, that, they're shopping around those media companies, which is who wants to buy a seat for the Academy Awards versus those are all dying businesses. This could actually be interesting if you're pairing all these growing businesses.
I'm not disagreeing with the idea of what that is, but I'm just telling you, he's not the
leader.
Right guy.
No,
he's not a strategic thinker in that way. He is not.
Who do you want to put?
I have no idea. It ain't him, though.
In the game of growth, everyone is looking for that power-up. Vibes is exactly that. It's built by industry people, so they actually get the challenges you're dealing with. As a result, they become the fastest-growing gamified rewards platform out there. And the results are kind of nuts. With their AI-powered targeting, you're not just buying installs. You're bringing in the right players. And now they've got this new ROAS optimization engine, so your campaigns basically level up automatically. Vibes is built different. It's designed for growth. And I guess you could say it's powered by good vibes. Check out their DOF exclusive case studies by following the link in the description. And go to vybs.co. That's vybs.co. Share your email and join the waitlist list.
In today's hyper-competitive digital landscape, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download isn't just insightful, it's the difference between scaling and stagnating. Enter AppsFlyer, the undisputed leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics. They've mastered the science of making every ad dollar work harder by revealing exactly where your players come from and how they interact with your app. Their platform transforms mountains of complex data into clear, actionable intelligence that separates winning campaigns from budget-draining experiments. And I know that many of the top game companies leverage AppsFlyer and are a key partner in their success. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
Stay ahead of the competition with Sensor Tower, the trusted source for mobile marketing intelligence. Whether you're tracking trends, benchmarking performance, or scouting the next big hit, Sensor Tower delivers the data that drives strategy. Dominate the charts with Sensor Tower.
I just dropped in this quick tweet from Miyamoto from Nintendo, which is, have you seen the live action images of Zelda? I mean, I was a kid playing, the very, very first, Zelda with 8-bit, and to now see Link and Zelda come to life is pretty fun. Adam, are you fanboying out?
Oh, yeah. Definitely fanboying. But I would say I'm more cautious with this one. Like, it looks nice for sure, but I'm more cautious than I am excited. Like, I just don't know how the writing's going to actually do this IP justice. Like Zelda has always been an incredible game. I would never say the stories of them were particularly amazing. So that's why I'm like, what are you going to do with this world? How are you going to create really strong writing? And Zelda in general has always been a pretty quirky IP. So going realistic, gritty, I think was the wrong choice. I still believe that this should have been an animated. Making it realistic and gritty is not the right direction.
I hear you. All right. Phil, what else we got?
Let's talk about some interesting trends that the West needs to wake up for. It is time to wake up the West. There are two games that have been, I would say, really interesting mirror images of one another. And we've been covering one of them throughout the year, and we've been touching on the other one here and there. And of course, I'm talking about Love and Deep Space, which is the action RPG Husbando game, which is from the developers of Love, Nikki. And the other one is Nikkei Goddess of Victory. And if you look at the Sensor Tower data, they are almost mirror images of each other. And when we look at the KPIs, you'll see that as well. So Goddess of Victory, this is the one that's more, let's say, for the males and has a lot of bountiful female characters, is 79% male, 21% female. And we're looking at iOS United States. The average age is 27. Then we look at Love and Deep Space, which is more focused on male characters and is for a female audience, which has the inverse distribution, 16% male, 84% female. The average age between both of them is the same. And so why do we give a shit about them? Well, it's not just success that they're having in the East, they're also having success in the West. So we're looking at revenue for both of these titles in the United States. And Love and Deep Space is doing around 6 million a month, while Nikkei Goddess of Victory is doing around 5, which is really impressive for both of those titles. And when we look at the monthly active users, Love and Deep Space is scaling in the United States. It's hitting around 800 to 600,000 monthly active users. Nikkei is doing really well, and that's remarkable given that it's a squad RPG. And if you remember, we've been covering AFK Journey and a lot of the struggles they've been having. And they published that piece a while back where they talked about the 6-month cliff that basically all these squad RPG faces. And Nikkei has hung in there. It actually has avoided a lot of that. And there's a lot of things we can talk about how Nikkei was avoided the squad RPG problem. And then we look at like the cumulative revenue for both these games. And again, we're just looking in the United States for Mr. Eric Kress. Nikkei Goddess of Victory has done over $140 million since it launched in 2023. Love and Deep Space, since it's launched in 2024, has done $86 million, Mr. Kress, just in the United States. This Husbando game from the East. That is a mainstream success. And when we look at the App Store rankings for both of them, these are both top 100 games.
Yeah.
Love and Deep Space is always hanging around 40 to 60, and Nikkei is just in the same space as well. And not only that, when we look at the total global revenue share for both of them, the United States is about 1/5 of revenue. So again, these are still games that are primarily generating money in the East, but the United States is a significant part of their story. And we are missing out. We are missing out on what these games are offering for audiences in the West. And I think the best way to look at this is to contrast it with Big Run Studios. This was a mobile game studio out of Oakland. And their whole thesis was to make mobile games for traditionally underserved audiences. And their definition of an underserved audience was, again, focusing on race and ethnicity. And I say, when we start to look at the numbers, is that something that's actually resonating with the audience? No, because Big Run Studios is basically toast at this point. Whereas we look at games from the East, they're going after a far more aggressive thesis that I don't think you would see originating from Westerners. And that has resulted in, as we've mentioned, massive revenue, but also huge changes in how these games are made. Like if we just look at, for example, Love and Deep Space, remember, this is an action RPG that also has photo shoots where you're going on adventures with your boyfriend, you're chatting with them. One of the ways that they've increased revenue over the last 12 months is that they added a wedding event. This is a fantasy that the West keeps missing. Like, women want to plan weddings. That is a huge female fantasy. And we have not executed against that fantasy. And they added a gacha-based wedding game. So you can get wedding dresses out of loot boxes. It feels so freaking obvious. Why are you not doing this? Not only that, they've added features like you being able to sleep next to your boyfriend. Yes, I'm not actually joking. They added a sleep feature. So all of these things are things that I would have a really hard time imagining a Westerner coming up with. But again, it's resonating with a Western audience. And it's the same thing for Nikkei Goddess of Victory. I would find it hard-pressed to imagine a Westerner coming up with a lot of the images we see coming out of Nikkei. And so I think it's time for us to wake up and just realize that when we talk about player empathy, it's not what you want players to have demand for. It's what players actually have demand for. And these games are going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to miss this thesis unless we wake up and, again, look at revealed preferences, not stated preferences. And this, to me, is a revealed preference. We want to be a little bit more icky than we traditionally have been when it comes to a lot of these genres.
The wedding dress feature is, especially when I was at Riot and learning a lot about Chinese culture and Chinese games, these are cultural moments for Eastern gamers that, to your point, Phil, are starting to find resonance with Western gamers. So it's not necessarily icky. A lot of those are just features and play patterns that, for some reason, are starting to find resonance here. But is it a small, did you show DAU or anything like that? Is it a smaller audience that's monetizing more heavily as a result of the revenue, or is it a bigger audience than we might assume? Well, I'd be interested to know how broad that audience can go in terms of number of people, or is it a small audience, deep monetization?
Is this a general outlier versus what we've seen in the past, where a lot of these sort of Asian IPs do find an audience in the West? Sort of anime IP does have an audience in the West. Like, is this an outlier in that case, or is this still like a general halo effect? Also, I don't really want to watch this video, so I'd rather not.
No, dude, this is player empathy. Do not avert your eyes.
You're making Adam uncomfortable, his Canadian sensibilities.
Well, Adam, are you really disturbed by actual sleep? We're not sleeping with, we're just watching a character sleep.
Weird. Can I just call it weird? It's just
no, you cannot.
It's weird for you.
Dude,
No,
I got in a lot of trouble,
better.
Adam, for that kind of comments, by the way.
No, but I'm just trying to get a sense of is the halo effect that we typically see from Eastern games going to the West, is this a different halo effect? Like, we've seen this for decades in terms of anime games still finding an audience in the West.
What would you take as a way to falsify that hypothesis when you talk about halo effect? Like, clearly they've sustained for a long time, but are you saying they've only because they've already been so successful in the East that this is basically just a little bit of an uplift in the West relative to that Eastern success?
So what I would double check is look back at history from a number of different anime games, like even like Dokkan Battle, right? Like Dragon Ball Z, these types of games. These all have had a percentage of their audience and percentage of their revenue coming from the West. Is this an outlier in terms of that percentage?
Dragon Ball Z's number one country is the United States. It's been in monster success in the West. Monster
for a long
success.
time. Yeah,
for a very long time.
Yeah, like there's other anime IP. Unfortunately, I don't have an encyclopedia of anime IP, but like there's been other anime-based games that have had a halo effect on Western. Does that percentage and ratio look different for these games?
So I would say they're not anime games, just to remember. These are not based on animes, both of them. So I think that's important to point out, even though they have that aesthetic and the Eastern aesthetic. I think that's important to point out, but there's no like flagship TV show or flagship anime behind them.
I think they're actually making content around Nikki, right? Or is it a different IP? I don't know. One of these just announced a major movie.
Let's love Nikki. That's the other
Love
one.
Nikki. Love
That's the other one
Nikki.
from Papercraft. Yeah.
The other, yeah.
I mean, this has far exceeded Love Nikki. Far exceeded the success of Love Nikki. I mean, we talked about Infinity Nikki, which, by the way, is struggling pretty hard right now. Look, if I were them, I'd dump that game and I'd be moving everything to Love and Deep Space. We cannot avert our eyes to this. This is really important to understanding players. And I think not only are they interesting in the respects of the West, but both of them are gacha-based games which have sustained for a large amount of time, right? And we've been talking about the drop in squad RPG in the West relative to the rise of 4X. And I think there might be some answers here.
I agree with the core premise that there's going to be a lot of people that want sort of a dating sim on mobile in the West. So how do you serve that audience the best? I actually don't know if a gacha-based RPG is the right way to approach that. Like we've seen a lot of these things, like even like Uma Musume, of like in the East, they tend to go towards that gacha-based model. Those games tend to have a halo effect towards the West. And that works for that audience. But if we're now saying like, hey, actually there's a larger Western audience that wants to do more of these type of dating sim games, I don't know if RPG and gacha is the right model approach to go after that audience.
I don't know. Their numbers look pretty good.
Well, like for that, but there is different types of people that want different types of dating sims, right? Like right now, if you turn on the filter or turn off the filter on Steam, you can look through a number of different types of dating sims that exist on Steam.
Also, a very interesting subgenre that no one's going after. There's a ton of dating sims on Steam.
And all I'll say, Phil, is like, if you want to go after dating sims for the West, where like Western audiences, like go build a company, get the funding, go after it. Yes, I think there's an open lane there.
VCs, give me a call. I am totally down. I will venture where no one else ventures.
Well, Phil, can I just say, I love that you talked a lot about player needs and wants and the opportunity for female gamers. Like, thank you for doing that. I mean, because...
And male gamers. By the way, Nikkei Goddess of Victor is a part of this too.
Yeah, correct. No, I like how you had the mirror of both sides of the story of how you can create game experiences that, are designed specifically for an audience that appears to be underserved. Do you want to talk about the next audience that appears to be underserved with Hoyoverse versus New Game?
Yeah, let's go quickly through this, but I think it's important that we touch on this too, is that Hoyoverse's Petite Planet entered closed beta on November 7th, so that was a couple weeks ago. And this is, I would say, or at least I'm going to argue, this has been a trend of what the Danes called hygge, or like these cozy beast games, although I don't understand why we haven't taken that and turned it into a lifestyle concept. So if you remember, you've got Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and I would really say Harvest Home, although Adam, feel free to jump in here if you think there's another one, that have been, those box sale games that have these life sim elements. And now we're starting to see a lot of Eastern developers turn them into live services. So you've got Heartopia coming, which is from China XD, Petite Planet, which we talked about from Hoyoverse. Remember, we've been really hyping this one up because they've been building essentially the same game over and over again, which has resulted in a lot of cannibalization. And this is an extremely new thesis. There's Meow Star Aces 2, which is from a Korean company. There's this one called Lofia, which I'm following, which is Solar Punk, from an Australian developer. Again, a lot of Western cultural values and making this all about conservation. Let's see if that lands. There's Hello Kitty Cafe, which has had an enormous success, I would argue, on Roblox. There's Pokepia. There's Palia, which I think people have underrated in terms of its life sim elements and have framed it too much as a survival game. Anemo, I'm a huge fan of. And of course, Pal World. I think all of these things are coming together and we're going to see a huge wave of these games. And again, I think they're going to have a huge resonance in the West, and we can't ignore them because I think they offer a lot of design solutions. I would say, again, for Squad RPG is the thing that I keep having in my mind. How do we solve a lot of the declines in Squad RPG without becoming 4X? I think there are answers in this life sim model.
Yeah, I think cozy games, which is complete juxtaposition to the last topic. This is on the other end of the spectrum. And, I think I talk about my
Different
wife being
cozy.
this. Yeah, different type of cozy, guys. And I know a lot of people who, especially, it's not even older people, it's a lot of Gen Z and millennials who are looking for that kind of escape in gaming, many of which are women, not all of them are women. And I do think it's an opportunity. I think it's a strong diversification strategy, especially for Hoyoverse in what they're doing. It was a great point, Phil, to do something completely different than let's do Zenless Zone Zero, like the third execution of the same kind of game with a different art style. So I've also heard that Hoyoverse is setting up shop in the West, might even be in LA. Call me, please. I would love to work on one of those games.
Ditto?
Yeah, exactly. Like just the ability to take their next IP, which I think it has some UGC elements to it too. I don't remember if I saw that as part of it, but it was like a little bit of a different angle. So I also wanted to add in that Animal Crossing has a major update for Switch and Switch 2 coming on January 15th. Obviously, this was playing in my household since there's a player that happens to have 10,000 hours in that game. And I think I've mentioned this before, but she is just like the screams of joy coming when those trailers were playing. So I was like, do you want to make a podcast segment taking everyone through what's coming? She was a better game explain. Actually, I think she's a better podcast host than me. So maybe I'll have her do that and talk about what's coming for Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I see this as the response for MiHoYo of we're cannibalizing. We're kind of splitting hairs with Honkai Star Rail and then Zenless over time. So trying to figure out who their new audience is. I would say here, the one part that I think some people miss is Genshin is actually a female dominated audience for under 25. More than 50% under 25, 60% female. So they've already moved towards this direction of a more female-focused strategy. And I think that they have good leverage here. I also think that they do well with the do what Nintendo don't type of strategy, where Genshin was Zelda, but done free-to-play, omni-platform, with a collection RPG, obviously. Petit Planet is now Animal Crossing, cozy, done omni-platform. So I think there's an open lane to take elements from Power World, lean more into collection than even Genshin can, and build a strong and enduring sort of crafting and building economy that can sustain the level of engagement. The one thing I'll call out here is Genshin has the RPG component, as in combat, that works well for them. This has to lean more into sort of farming and crafting collection. So I think the structure is going to end up in a space where it goes closer to Heyday and Township as an end game instead of say a Pokemon RPG. I think that's the only way that they'd be able to sustain.
Adam, if you don't remember, I did recommend this many times at Warner, right?
You did. I remember that.
The cozy games.
It was on the list.
That was 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
I remember it was on the list, but then it got superseded by The Metaverse by Matthew Ball.
Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
Fucking moron. Absolute moron. I think these games are ripe for opportunities to just build on. Maybe that, you're right. It is the next potential collection-based RPG games are in a cozy universe that is much more approachable for more mass markets.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. I think that's all we have for today. We left a lot on the table. We'll get to that next week. See you next week, everyone.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.